So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Will Ockenden, who's one of the owners at Prohibition PR, which is a top Northern PR company. So, firstly, Will, thank you for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Prohibition, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, my name is Will Ockenden. I'm one of the owners at Prohibition. We're a Leeds-based integrated PR agency, which basically means we do traditional PR. We get clients talked about in the media.
Yep.
We do publicity stunts, but we also do content creation. We engage with influencers. We do paid social media, and really that's the kind of a modern type of PR agency.
Yes.
We've been going 12, 13 years, and I'm pleased to say we're one of the top agencies in the North. There's 30 of us. We work across consumer markets, B2B markets. Some of our clients are people like Interflora, Oxford University. We work with Astonish, which is a cleaning company, all sorts of brands in lots and lots of different sectors. Yeah, and we've got a great team and we love what we do.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So I'm going to come back to the stunts. You need to share some point. But so just for anyone watching, what would make a great client for you? What are the sort of people that you work and serve best, would you say?
Yeah, good question. First of all, we've got a bit of an informal formula in the agency called Fun, Fame and Fortune. So we don't just want to do work for the sake of doing work.
Yep.
I think when you start as an agency or a business, and this is not just applicable to PR, to all sorts of sectors, you're just hungry for any type of work. But
Yes.
we've realized, we're in the fortunate position where we can be selective with the type of clients that we work with, and we want to work with the right type of clients. So first of all, fun. We have to have fun delivering the work. It has to be the type of work that energizes us and gets us out of bed. And that typically means big creative stunts, work that moves the needle, if you like. Fame, meaning we want the opportunity and we want the ambition from a client to be able to do big creative activations that get people talking. And fortune, they have to be prepared to pay properly for it. So, it's no good having the biggest and loftiest ambitions in the world as a brand. If you've not got the budget to actually deliver that, then it's not always possible. All of our clients don't always fit into the fun fortune box, but that's what we aspire for.
No, thank you. That's really, really well articulated. And the thing for me is, if we're clear on that, we will pick up some other people up that says, I'm not quite in there, but can I join? But at least we're really clear the people that are going to get the best long-term relationship with us. And
that's exactly right. And I think, you work with a client that perhaps doesn't respect your advice, it's perhaps a toxic relationship, that impacts every level of the agency. It demotivates the staff. It makes us doubt our own abilities. Often those type of clients will steal time, and we'll end up spending more time on something, and
yes.
Actually what seems to be quite profitable isn't profitable at all. So we've learned over the years it's not really worth compromising on our values in that respect. And I'm happy to say we've got a whole bunch of clients that respect us, we respect them, and we've got fantastic working relationships with them. And we talk about working as an extension of their team, and that sounds like a bit of a cliche that you quote in a pitch to win business, but that's genuinely true for us. And we have those brilliant relationships at a board level with our clients where, like I say, they respect us, we respect them, and we have long-standing great relationships.
Wonderful. So get back to stunts. Sorry, the fun. What would be one of the most memorable, or what would be a stunt that you could share with us that would?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. We love to do PR stunts, and I think that's the kind of one of the more visible, fun bits of the job. You don't always get the opportunity.
I get
to do them, and sometimes. They can be pretty stressful, but when you deliver a great PR stunt, it can have a ton of impact. I mean, we've done so many over the years. An example being we work with Yorkshire Water, so we're one of Yorkshire Water's agencies, and obviously they do fantastic work across the region, but equally they're a monopoly.
Yes.
So it's really, really important that we kind of explain to the people of Yorkshire about the great work they do, the investment in the network, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the biggest challenges they've got is people flushing objects that they shouldn't flush, often due to a lack of education. So, for example, baby wipes is one of the worst things people can flush. It creates all sorts of blockages in the pipes, fats, greases, and oils, as well as another thing, often from restaurants and things like that. So what we, the brief in this case was to kind of educate without patronizing people about what you should and shouldn't flush. So we looked at the data, and the best campaigns come from insight and come from data. And we're having conversations with our client, and we found out some of the more unusual objects that people have flushed down the toilet and have landed in the sewer. And it's things like, well, first of all, a fat berg made of wet wipes, which is about the size of a beach ball. Shopping trolleys have ended up in the sewers, children's dolls, ironing boards, all this mad stuff. So we found this out, and at the same time, there was, I don't know if you saw on Netflix, there's a short series called Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which was a collection of kind of short form horror movies. So we created Yorkshire Water's Cabinet of Curiosities, and it was basically an art exhibition in which we did in Trinity in Leeds, huge footfall, and it's basically as presented as a fine art exhibition, but all of these objects that have been flushed down sewer, and we build it as the most disgusting art exhibition you'll ever visit in your life. And it was great, and it looked amazing, and it's all these kind of I mean, it wasn't the actual objects. We kind of created them with a kind of a prop artist, but it was these disgusting, dripping, brown, decaying objects, but presented in kind of beautiful, clear glass cages. And it's a chance to kind of educate the public. And we got the region's media there. We got Look North, we got Calendar TV doing live crosses from there, hugely successful, and actually drove impact as well, i.e. drove consumer behavior change. And that's what the best campaigns do. So that's just an example. We've done millions more. So if we've got time, I'll give you another one at the end of the show.
That would be great. No, absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. Well, look, maybe if we start the conversation looking backwards a little bit, and you could talk to a little bit about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you.
Yeah, of course. So left university vaguely interested. Well, not vaguely interested. I left university with an interest in the media, but no clear idea how I could get into the media. And I like the idea of being involved in influencing the news agenda in some respects. I didn't really fancy journalism. It didn't feel quite right for me. And a few people have kind of advised me, it can be very, very tough for a lot of years in journalism. And randomly saw a job at a PR agency in Wakefield called Green PR, run by the absolutely brilliant Andy Green, who now lives in Wales, but one of my great mentors and a creative legend in the world of PR. So I did a year's work experience there and actually found out what PR was all about, and started to realize actually this is fascinating. I've got the chance to create and drive the news agenda and deliver amazing creative campaigns, help protect brands' reputations. It just felt so exciting and so interesting. And the fact that you would work across 6 or 7 clients at one time, and they say a journalist's knowledge or a news journalist's knowledge is very shallow and very deep, whereas a PR's knowledge is very, very narrow and incredibly deep. So I learned everything there was to know about polystyrene trays that raw chicken goes in, for example. And that's true of anyone in PR. You get incredible niche knowledge. And then moved on to Leeds, worked in various consumer and B2B agencies in Leeds. I spent a couple of years in Australia working in PR there, helping set up an office there. Basically came back to the UK and connected with my now business partner, Chris Norton. He was freelancing at the time, and I was basically freelancing. And we'd discussed over the course of many years, the opportunity to set an agency up. We'd both headed up. So we both worked in the social media team, kind of leading the social media team of another agency in Leeds. And at the time, this was kind of a couple of years after Facebook and Twitter and everything had come out, and people were starting to talk about, what's social media? Most agencies at the time weren't really getting a hold of it. social media. You'd either get
Yes.
standalone social media agencies that did content. PR agencies were struggling to keep up, and we saw a really clear opportunity to launch and to grow a kind of an integrated PR agency that
Yep.
did the PR bit, the traditional PR bit, really well, but also recognized, consumers will read a newspaper, but the journey doesn't stop there. 2 weeks later, they may go on a chat room. They may be going onto a meta platform like Facebook or Instagram and reading influencer content. And the fact is, to be impactful, you need to operate across multiple platforms, whether that's influencer channels, paid social channels, web channels, media channels. And anyway, at the time, there wasn't really any agencies, certainly in the north of England, doing that very well. So we, very quickly grew Prohibition, started in a dusty attic, which is typically where, agencies usually start in a very
All the best
unglamorous
businesses
location.
are. Yep.
Yeah, and over the years, saw quite rapid growth. As you do with an agency, it's all about the quality of the work initially, and you can leverage that. And I remember we did we won a project with Interflora, which at the time was one of the biggest brands we've ever worked for. We delivered an amazing campaign for them, which we won a lot of awards on the back of, and then we managed to leverage that. We moved to various offices, grew the team, and fast forward to today, we're in Leeds city centre. There's 30 of us. We've got an in-house creative team, a videography team, which is doing some great work. We've got paid social capabilities, and we've got a great kind of account handling team. And yeah, we're now at that kind of, we're past that aggressive growth curve, and we're now much more mature as an agency.
Yeah, wonderful. That's a chunky business, isn't it? A chunky agency, because I think agencies have different. There is my impression, and I'm not an over expert, is you either say quite small, sort of 4 or 5 people, one or two, 3 or 4, but to get to 30s.
Yeah, it's the larger size, certainly in the north, for a kind of a pure PR agency. And I think the opportunity and the challenge for this sector, as a lot of service businesses, you can start quite small. You can start in a garage or an attic, and you can make quite a lot of profit. You can hire a few people, and a lot of agencies stay at that kind of 4 or 5 size.
Yes.
That's great, and that's a good lifestyle business, and you can make a good income from that. But it's not really a business. It's a collection of individuals doing great work, but there's few processes in place, and we're obsessed with workflows, with processes. We're developing proprietary technologies, things like that. And to get to this size, you have to behave like a business, and that means aggressively scaling. It means having very, very robust processes in place, a great marketing engine, a great sales engine, and trying to introduce process as much as possible, which just drives efficiencies. And it's a lot of hard work to get to that point, but to get to this sort of size, you have to have those processes in place.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because we often say to people, businesses are started by people often that are good at what they do. They're not necessarily good at running a business at what they do, but it would suggest evidence as you are, which is great. So that if that makes sense,
that's that. I agree with that. And the other thing I would add to that is, I think the tendency is for people to start a business with their mates or people they get on with, who have the same set of skills. And what's really worked with Chris and I is we're very, very different people. We get on really well. But very, very different people, and that means we've got a very, very different skill set. So I bring a very different set of skills than Chris does, and I couldn't do what Chris does. He's very driven by innovation, technology. He's leading the AI practice at the moment within the agency, but I'm more about client servicing. I'm more about creativity, company culture, that kind of thing. And that works really, really well, because it'd be the worst thing in the world to be, well, not the worst thing in the world. It would be challenging to be in a business relationship with somebody who's got exactly the same skill set as you. It would be really tough.
100%. It's not always the most comfortable ride, but the great thing, healthy friction is well, friction is energy. So it's great to create that for a difference of opinion if it's dealt with in the right way. Brilliant, because we tend to expand into areas that we wouldn't do if we were both thinking, as you said, exactly the same. Um, but I'm guessing, obviously, it's a great. I mean, clearly a very great success story. There must have been a few issues you've had to overcome over time, Will.
I mean, it's there's the usual issues of working in a service business. So, and the nature of PR is, or traditional PR at least, is you're reliant on the news agenda, and
Yes.
you can have the best possible campaign, and then a world event happens. So,
Yes.
the number of campaigns we had to pull and pause, sometimes indefinitely, when COVID hit, for example.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a bigger example, but equally it could be America declaring war, on another country. It could be a huge political event. Anything like that can just dominate the pages in a newspaper for weeks. So, with the best will in the world, it can be tough. Equally, the nature of the online world is that you will launch campaigns, but ultimately you relinquish control sometimes when a campaign's released into the online world, and they can take certain twists and turns that perhaps you weren't ready for. I'm not going to elaborate on that for fear of incriminating myself, but I mean that is par for the course for
yeah,
working in PR. In terms of challenges, it's the usual stuff. I mean, certainly scaling the business has been hard work, but
yeah,
ultimately that's been successful. I mean, we're preparing for the next stage of growth, actually, which I'll talk about in a minute. You learn along the way. I mean, certainly, increasingly, and we've always believed this, but increasingly, ultimately, it's a people business. We don't have machinery. We don't create a widget. Ultimately, the strength of the business is down to hiring great people.
yeah,
And hiring people is not even always people with the right skill set. It's often attitudinal, and we've hired people that perhaps are inexperienced, but they culturally they're a great fit. They've got the right energy. They've got the right attitude. And you hire someone that's not culturally aligned, and you pay for it every time. It's something we've learned, and we've got very good at. We've got a really great team of people that are kind of culturally aligned, and it's a great thing to see, actually, that you set the parameters, you set the expected behaviors, and then you see this culture grow and evolve beyond. And it's not a case of me and Chris steering that. It's a genuinely organic thing, and it's great to see
yeah.
people flourishing, and ultimately look after the people, build a great culture, and the work will look after itself.
Yeah, brilliant. There's lots of case studies, I guess, not even case study, but of where the team starts to not just create but police the culture. That's when you
Yeah.
get the most successful teams. You see that in sport a lot, where it's about, this is how we do it this way, and it's not the leaders or the managers, whoever they would be. It's the team themselves that say, this isn't how this is how we work here.
Totally right, and having quite a flat structure. We don't sit in glass offices, not talking to the team. It's anyone can talk to anyone.
Yeah,
Nobody's got a monopoly on a good idea, is something I always say. Often the best ideas and the best innovations come from the account exec that's been in the role for 3 months straight out of university. And quite honestly, they're better placed to tell us what's happening in Gen Alpha and Gen Z circles.
absolutely.
I'm in my early 40s. And anyone that listens to this is going to laugh because I'm 44, and apparently that's mid to late 40s. So, but if we want somebody to tell us what's happening on TikTok, or we want to know what's trending, or what, culturally what's happening in certain communities, we have to look to of course, the team are better placed than us to do that. I mean, there's no point in. Sorry, I'm rambling on this bit. You might
Keep going. It's great.
Yeah. So you can. I'll stop. I wasn't going anywhere with that, so I'll stop.
Well, it's funny that you say that. So it's also a great excuse for nepotism. So it's a great reason I've employed my daughter to help me with this, that really sort of basic stuff of social media. We need to come into the modern
Yeah.
world a bit more. But she's just all over it. And we go, well, we want to do. Oh yeah, well we can do that. And funny enough, I was with both my daughters last night having dinner, and they went, we typically post these interviews on both YouTube and LinkedIn because that's where we probably operate. But we just talk about stuff. They went TikTok, and I went,
Mm.
yeah, okay. Well, as you say, they get it, and I struggle not to get it, but I get it in terms of what the value it could be, but how to start using it effectively, etc. Not my
Yeah,
bag.
I mean, that's how Rory Sutherland suddenly became this kind of Gen Z force to be reckoned with, wasn't it? And he was a very successful businessman, obviously kind of chairman of the Ogilvy Group, but
Yep.
no one had really heard of him. And his amazing little vignettes and wisdom
Yes.
started trending on TikTok. And he's must be the hottest property in business on TikTok now, and is speaking at all these kind of conferences around the world in a way that he never would have done before. So it's fascinating to see,
Yes.
a man in his mid-60s. It's fairly unlikely, isn't it, that he'd suddenly be trending on
Yeah.
TikTok, but he is. So here we
and
are.
it and it's the perfect sort of media for someone that is quite unique in my opinion. In terms of not just his content, what he says, but how he presents, how he looks. Though he has a brand, so the
Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant as well. And we actually run a podcast ourselves called Embracing Marketing Mistakes, and he's on our hit list of guests that we'd love to get on the show. So we're working on it.
brilliant. We'll have a chat afterwards. We might be able to help you a little bit on that one. So yeah, we must have a chat afterwards on that one. Brilliant. Yeah, no, and you mentioned two or three things already, but what would you say are your top tips for or top learnings about growing a successful business, Will?
um, yeah, I mean, the develop kind of trying to automate as many processes as possible
Yep.
is really important, and building machines in the background. Essentially, I said we don't have machines per se, but you need to move on from a number of talented individuals working in the
Yes.
same room, and certainly one of the areas we've done that is building the brand, and building our kind of thought leadership position, and really playing the long game there. And for a long time, a long time ago, we kind of recognized that we need to be in the consideration set for new clients, and ultimately that's about sharing knowledge. It's about building our expertise, and there's no shortcuts to that really. So we really kind of played the long game when it came to expertise, and that meant lots and lots of long form content. The last couple of years, we've actually launched our own agency podcast, which was all, and we're on what are we on? 200 episodes now. I might have got that wrong. Sorry, we're on 100 episodes. Is
Brilliant.
that right? I should know that, shouldn't I? No,
I
sorry.
can
We've
I
been
can
going
tell
2 years.
you.
Have you got the information there? I think it
I've
might be 100.
You've certainly, yeah, I can find out. You've certainly got, which I think is 140,000 downloads, which is pretty
Right.
cool for anyone watching.
Yeah.
Um,
So, but we're 100 plus episodes in. There we
yeah,
go. That's a safe way to say it.
yep,
And it's a huge, it's we have our video team filming it. We seed content across social media. We invest an awful lot of time in it, but
yes,
as a process, we've really kind of got that down, and we also recognize that we're in it for the long term. You're not going to get immediate returns from that. So but the point is building these really robust processes. So you can't just be slapdash about new business. You can't be slapdash about your marketing, or your sales processes. So the marketing we got down. We invested a lot of money in HubSpot, for example. We
yep,
track where our leads come from. We optimize our marketing based on where the leads are coming from. We're
yep,
constantly innovating and trying new things, and looking at opportunities. Equally with sales, we've invested a lot of time and effort in looking at how we articulate value, and how we approach sales. And every single process within the agency we analyze and we break down, and we try and systematize, and then we optimize. So
brilliant.
it's about building lots and lots of processes, and rather than just kind of being a little bit I think up to a certain size, you can be a little bit more intuitive about it, and you can kind of you can make decisions based on instinct, and that's fine,
Yes.
and we still do that. But ultimately, the more you've got this kind of machine in the background, the better, and that's really kind of helped to scale. I think the challenge we've got now, which is always the challenge. I mean, it's a fast-moving sector. We some of the stuff. If we talk about social media later, the chances are by the time this airs, that won't even be true because the
Yep.
algorithms will have changed the platform so much.
Yes.
So being in such a fast-moving platform, we have to constantly look at innovation. I mean, obviously, AI is one of the big areas.
Yeah.
But we're trying to look beyond the superficial AI use, and we're looking at bedding in AI in a meaningful way,
Yeah.
and actually looking at freeing up staff hours without actually having to recruit any more staff. So we're looking at the most time-intensive tasks within the agency, and that can be things like meeting notes. It can be things like perhaps first draft copy on press releases, whatever it is. And then we're looking at bedding in custom agents with AI that people can then use. And then we're attempting to measure that time saving. So essentially we're freeing up capacity within the team. So it's a much more structured way of doing it.
Brilliant.
The other big thing we're doing in order to remain competitive is we're going through something of a repropositioning process, which that sounds like a bit of a marketing wank word, if I'm honest. But we're looking at the value we bring our clients, and we're looking at our most
Yep.
successful client relationships and trying to identify the commonalities and the trends. And we've realized our longest standing, most successful client relationships, we don't just deliver a service, i.e. 20 press releases, 100 social media posts. We actually deliver a business impact, and that's typically growth. It's either revenue growth, reputational growth,
Yep.
Whatever it may be. So we've repropositioned the agency around the kind of the strap line of helping ambitious brands grow faster. And it's the idea that we don't just sell a service, we sell a business impact. And we've developed products against that. And the idea of doing that is we move away increasingly from a hours-based model, i.e. it's going to take 3 days a month to write this many press releases.
Yep.
And we actually drive business impact. So we might, for example, change consumer behavior. We might help a brand break into a new market. And some of the case studies we've got, we do exactly that. We help a brand get a listing in one of the top 4 supermarkets. We help a brand increase their shelf space. We help a brand increase its revenue. So it's backing what we do, really. And I think there can often be a tendency in public relations to not actually believe in the impact of what we do, because it can be seen as a bit of an intangible discipline sometimes, and it can be quite hard to measure. But we try and look beyond that and look at the business impact, and that's really getting some good traction. So there's lots we're doing to kind of look ahead to the future, because ultimately, I think agencies are a little bit of a crossroads at the moment, and there is a threat from AI. A lot of clients are looking at in-housing services. They're looking at doing things themselves. Jobs are becoming commoditized. What we need to do as PR people is move up the value chain and look at that real value we add. And that can be crisis management, senior counsel, that kind of thing. And then look at ways of automating some of those more commoditized tasks. And that's how agencies are going to be relevant. And it'll be like when 2006, when social media blew up, lots of agencies were very cynical about social media. And where are they now? They're probably gone because they're irrelevant, and we're obsessed with staying on the cutting edge in that respect.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a very articulate way of talking about how I think AI primarily will benefit most of us, which is the delegation of, repetitive base level tasks. But that creative spark, that what makes us different, one thing AI can never be, it can mimic but can't be, is human. And if we focus on the human skills, both of meeting people, but also that creative side of our brains, I think is, So I think rather, as you say, rather than fear it or ignore it, let's just embrace it and say how can we get the best benefit from? And the great thing is, in most cases, it means that the people that ourselves and the people that work with us and for us are doing more of the stuff they really like and they're really good at.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and it's I'll give you an example. Our video and production team, there's 4 of them. They've been way ahead of the curve in terms of using AI. So they spend an awful lot of their time editing, and they're going to shoot me when they hear the terminology I'm going to use, but they spend an awful lot of time editing, and I don't know what the terminology is. What should I'm trying to think what they editing and improving the quality, post production, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
God, that took me a while to get to, didn't it? So they've been great at using AI, not to do the whole editing process. They still need to do that. But for example, when we record a podcast, AI will trawl through an hour and a half worth of footage, and it will make recommendations into what it believes the most viral clips will be.
Yes.
And then it can do some post-production on those clips, and there's all sorts of efficiencies which those guys are doing. The one thing you can't replace is coming up with great concepts and being in the field shooting content. We've been shooting content for Rolex this week. Filming some of the Rolex engineers in their workshop. AI can't do that. Maybe one day it can, but at the moment AI can't do that. So it allows us more capacity in the team without having to hire anyone else, and it allows the very, very talented videographers to focus on what they love doing rather than the admin side of their job.
Absolutely.
So that model is brilliant, and long may that continue as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been doing a lot with what we do for a long time. I think it's Brian Tracy had the concept originally, was the most successful individuals and teams are the ones where most people spend most of their time doing the 3 things they really love and they're really good at, and everything else gets delegated to somebody or something. Now it can be something. If you take AI as a thing, there will be something, but too many people spend too much time doing stuff that, as I said, they don't really like it, and consequently they're not very good at it. It's like, the 2 things go together. If you don't like it, you're not going to be good at it, and if you're not good at it, you're probably not going to like it. So let's just cut to the chase and just do good stuff. And everyone's happier. So, Will, you're probably aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches are, the best coaches you've met, whether that's business, sport, or life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
When you say coaches, as in, does that involve trainers or training as well?
Can include anybody. Who's had the biggest impact? I mean, and they don't necessarily have to be people who met. You mentioned Rory Sutherland as an example. He may or not be one, but who shaped your identity as a business owner?
Well, I'll talk in sort of I'll talk individually and as an agency. I mean, Chris and I massively believe in training and coaching, and we spend quite a lot of money on upskilling our team. We've created a kind of a culture of learning where we recognise there's people in the team that are excellent at different things, and often we'll get a very junior member of the team to teach the whole agency. It might be media relations, it might be how to engage with influencers. So massive believers in kind of learning and development. Probably from a personal perspective, Andy Green, who was my first boss.
So you mentioned, of course,
big creativity guru. He wrote the first book of creativity in PR. Had a lot of very interesting, wild ideas in some cases. Didn't always have, didn't always execute them, but just brilliant creative brain. Does a lot of training in creativity and PR actually as well. But he got me to think differently about PR and about what was possible. And he had all sorts of, he talks about kind of red light thinking and green light thinking, and how, you should never, in a brainstorm scenario, you should never apply red light thinking. Any idea is good. It's only in the evaluation phase when you need to start qualifying ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So absolutely. Andy, from a kind of an early career perspective, and he very much opened up my eyes and my ears really to the idea that PR can be a super creative discipline. I think you look at advertising, for example, you think, oh, that's creative, but PR isn't. But definitely, definitely PR can and should be a creative discipline. And then Andy mentioned a guy called Mark Bukowski, who used to run Bukowski PR. Hopefully, we're going to get him on our podcast at some point.
Brilliant.
Again, he was a big inspiration early days as well. Very, very creative guy. Fast forwarding sort of to the agency, really. I'm trying to think of some of the, we regularly invite in guest trainers from a kind of a leadership perspective, senior leadership perspective. One of our clients, full disclosure, this is one of our clients, but we work with a very interesting and insightful organisation called Huthwaite International, who are based in Yorkshire. Now, they are a international skills and, they're an international sales and negotiation training company. So they will train some of the biggest companies in the world at a very high level into how to improve your sales processes, how to improve your negotiation. Some of the stuff they talk about in terms of kind of dirty tricks in negotiation is absolutely fascinating. But we've actually had a session with one of their trainers, a guy called Robin Hoyle, is absolutely brilliant guy, all about selling and negotiation. And he very much kind of broke down the process of sales into a process, basically, and it's all about asking the right questions. And it's amazing. I mean, I won't give it away now because listeners should absolutely speak to him if they want to find out more. But it was a bit of a game changer for us as an agency, in the way we structure our decks, the way we ask questions and seek information when we're taking a brief. And I think after that training, we had a big pitch coming up, and we kind of religiously applied his methodology. It's based on the SPIN methodology, which is quite a famous and long-standing sales methodology, and we won it. I think we actually won it in the pitch. The chief exec actually awarded it to us in the pitch, which is brilliant. Probably the second time that's happened in 20 years in my career.
Fantastic.
So definitely. But yeah, like I said, we invest a lot of money in training. So there's been so many great trainers over the years. But yeah, Robin definitely stands out.
Brilliant. And from any of the people you mentioned or any other sources, do you have any favourite quotes or sayings about business or success in general that you can share?
Is this where I get to share a really cliche, when you go to some sort of
Absolutely.
Paper manufacturer in Slough and you see a picture of an eagle soaring above the cliff. But there is one, I'm not sure who to attribute this to, but I had to write it down actually because I couldn't remember it fully, but this sort of underlines a lot of what I've been saying about team and about culture and about people. And I need to look at who said this, but you don't build a business, you build people, and the people build the business. And I think that's so true. Of course, you do build a business, and there's an element of processes and things like that. But ultimately, it's down to the people, and you create. Your job as a business owner and a leader is to create an environment where people can flourish, and the rest tend to have a habit of working itself out. Because ultimately, if you've got engaged, happy, motivated people, they deliver amazing work. They will deliver an amazing culture.
Yeah,
and that's all you can ask for. You can't force people to do that, but a great culture and great people will naturally do that.
Definitely. Yeah, but absolutely bang on. We had Gary Vaynerchuk at our last national conference.
Oh, great,
Gary V. Yeah, we had him over in last April, last April, I should say. And one thing he said was, he says a job of one of the last jobs an owner or a founder of a business should relinquish is regular contact with everyone in the organisation, and acknowledging the fact as an organisation grows, how you make that happen can be different. But the more one-to-one, especially mentioned more one-to-one time you can have, as much as possible, then that's our job. And obviously, to do that, we have to relinquish some of the other stuff that might have originally been our day job. But that's part of our job. Culture, connection, communication, I think is so key.
Was he as hyperactive as he seems? Or was he a bit calmer face to face?
I have to say he was brilliant. He was really quite, very impactful, very relaxed. He was quite comfortable. Not that people didn't take his message on board, but it was just like this was his truth, and just to be clear, everyone thought most people thought what he was saying was absolutely brilliant, but it wasn't like you've got to get my message or anything. He was just really talking from, I say, from the heart. Sounds a bit, might sound a bit cliche, but this is what he fundamentally believed. He wasn't presenting some information that he may or may not believed. It was real,
Yeah,
just that's authenticity, I guess, is a word that's used
yeah,
a lot. Very
yeah.
authentic about
I
being
get that
him.
impression. Yeah, because he's a bit divisive online, isn't he? But I think his heart is in the right place.
I think that's what came across for me because if I'm perfectly frank, I know of him. I've read some of his books, but I don't follow him. I actually went. Funny enough, I went. I invited. I've got a friend of mine who's a rugby league coach. He's coached Leeds. He's coached quite a few of the big, and he's an absolute Gary V fanboy. And I didn't realise till he went, "Oh, I'm coming," and and I think he got the fact that again, Tony himself is very authentic, and I think
Mm,
he must have connected with that authenticity that he has. So no, it really was quite impactful, that
mm.
presentation he had. Um, yeah, um, I won't go any further. I'll touch you offline a bit more, but I won't go any further. Um, and similarly, just any favourite books or podcasts you can recommend, especially your own, just so we're clear.
Yeah. So, well, I will mention ours. It's a chance to give it a bit of a plug.
Absolutely.
The beauty of our podcast is it's not really about us because no one wants to hear about us talking about prohibition for an hour twice a week. So we're big believers in embracing your mistakes, right? So if you don't make enough mistakes, if you don't make a mistake, you're not pushing hard enough, and
Yes.
making a mistake isn't always a negative thing. If you make a mistake, it means you're pushing the limits, you're trying something new. And we were sort of mulling around that theme, and we thought, senior marketers must have so many amazing mistakes that they want to talk about. So rather than it being a general business show, I mean, we do talk about marketing and we try and share value, but the middle section is always, share your fuck ups and share your mistakes,
Brilliant.
basically. And we've had all sorts of people on the show. And there's been some amazing mistakes. Some people have remortgaged their house to launch a new business, which has subsequently failed. Equally, you get absolutely hilarious stunts. Absolutely hilarious mistakes when people have done kind of PR stunts that have
Yeah.
gone wrong. And somebody had, I can't remember what it was now. It was an animal escaped from Sydney Zoo and was careering around Sydney city centre with Channel 7 news helicopter following it. So we've had all sorts of mistakes, but there's always
Brilliant.
a kind of an underlying lesson. So absolutely listen to that. In terms of other podcasts that I love, I mean, I'm two which I think are really relevant for anyone in comms. One is The Rest is Entertainment, which is a goal hanger podcast
Yes.
with Marina Hyde and Richard. I can't remember what his name is. Richard Osmond.
Yes.
And basically, that is about a kind of an insider's take on what's happening in the entertainment industry. So they cover
Yep.
everything from the Brooklyn Beckham, Nicole Peltz fallout through to what really goes on behind the scenes on Clarkson's farm. So giving you that kind of rounded popular culture
Yep.
heartbeat is brilliant. And then there's a PR specific one called When It Hits the Fan, which is all about kind of crises in PR with David Yelland, who's a former Sun editor. So from a business perspective, that they were absolutely great books. Sorry, great podcasts. And then books, God knows, I'd try to read so many, they all blur into one. But yeah, I'd say podcasts. I mean, the beauty of the podcast medium that you'll know is, I can't remember what the stat is. I think 70% of people listen to a podcast at least 90% of the way through. So most people listen to most of a podcast, and there's no other media as a content marketing medium.
Yes.
There's no other medium where you can engage somebody one on one for an hour.
Yeah.
You think about you could spend a day writing a blog post, and somebody might, typically someone's going to either skim it or read the first paragraph, and you might get a minute of attention. A
Yeah.
podcast you can captivate for an hour, and
Yeah.
it's just an unbeatable medium in that respect. And obviously people will listen to them when they're running, when they're cooking, when they're
Yeah.
driving, and you've really got their attention. So it's great to see this kind of resurgence of podcasts. I think when they emerged, there was great interest in them, and then they kind of died a bit of a death for a few years. And probably the last 5-6 years, there's been a massive growth in in podcasts as a kind of as an entertainment medium.
Yeah, agreed. Coming back to your podcast for a second, it's interesting you talked about mistakes. Our founder, we you may or may not be aware, but actually Coach Yourself is a global organisation. So we're the largest organisation of business coaches for owner managed businesses in the world, and consequently, our founder is pretty successful, as you can probably imagine.
Mm.
And he said to me many years ago, and this is really fascinating. He believes he's as successful he is because he's made more mistakes than anybody else. Not despite it, but literally because
Mm.
and I believe that's the mindset of being able to accept mistakes as being part of success is a massive strategy and a massive part of our identity. So thank you for explaining the title for you, but it's bang on as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it really seems to be resonating with people. We've I mean, the challenge with a podcast is you establish a new medium or a new format, and you have to have a few episodes. I mean, we got some great guests early doors on it, actually, I must admit. But then people start listening to it and understanding the format, and then we're now in a fortunate position where we've got people prospecting us to come onto the podcast, and
Yep.
We're getting some really high profile guests. We're getting authors. We're getting media personalities. It's fantastic, and more than that, it's our chance to learn from the best
Yeah.
in the fields, and the team then subsequently listen to the podcast. But we're getting an hour and a half FaceTime with some absolute thought leaders around the globe, and we've had guests from from Scandinavia, from America, all
Brilliant.
over the place really, and it's been a great, hugely time consuming, but a great a great thing to do. And also it then gives us credibility to sell podcasting. And guess what? In the last year, we've launched a podcasting practice within the firm, and
Oh, okay.
we've now got a studio in the office where we're creating, for Huthwaite International, for example, we're doing like a 10-part podcast around sales and sales techniques and things like that.
Interesting.
As a kind of a B2B content marketing medium, it's hugely growing, B2B podcasting,
Brilliant.
and something we really believe in.
Brilliant. And and what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far, Will?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the importance of playing the long game is a kind of overriding lesson. I think there's the online world when it comes to starting businesses is pretty toxic. There's this kind of hustle culture. There's 20-year-old kids who are freelancers calling themselves chief executive officers on LinkedIn and talking about their get up at 4 a.m, play a game of squash, do a board, and there's this kind of toxic hustle culture. And to a
Yes.
degree, that's driven this kind of impatience of, I want success and I want it now.
Yeah.
And I've always tried, a few people early on in my career told me about sort of playing the long game, working really hard at very busy agencies, working on some great clients, upskilling myself, being curious, putting in the hours for years and years, quite honestly, most of your 20s. And you start, that experience. And it's not, it's not just the 9 to 5. It's the kind of being curious and building your knowledge and reading around your subject and tuning into TV commercials or PR stunts or the news agenda, whatever. It's an awful lot that isn't just the job for not much reward when you're, certainly when I started in PR, I was on probably below minimum wage or something. But yeah, you put the hours in and you get the experience and opportunities start to open up. And and then certainly in my 30s, my career started developing, and then probably once partnering up with Chris and Prohibition started to grow, that took time. But we're now suddenly 13 years has passed, and we're a big agency. And also not letting your ego get I think when you're in that kind of fast growing agency perspective, if you're not careful, your ego can get a bit out of control, and you see a lot of I'm going to say in London, not in the north so much, but you get a lot of kind of quite egocentric agency owners Chris and I have always we've believed in what we do, but we refuse to get caught up on the hype, and we're constantly heads down, hardworking. You know, we've not shifted to playing golf on a Thursday and a Friday just yet. I don't think we ever will. You know, we're present. We're in the agency. We're you know, and I think the moment you take your eye off the ball and you get caught up in the hype, you're doomed, quite honestly. But yeah,
Yes.
bringing it back, I think playing the long game is super important. And all of that investment is kind of the theory of marginal gains or compound interest, isn't it?
Yep.
You know, you listen to one podcast a week, you know, you read a new book once a month, and suddenly you've read 100 new books.
Yeah.
And that idea of compound interest is really, really important.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. Interesting what you just said. So within Actually Coach my organisation, our definition of a true business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without its owners. And I'm just interested. I've given you what you just said. What are your thoughts on that, and you know, and reaction to that?
Well, I totally agree, actually. And I think the early days of the agency, it was harder to take holiday. You know,
Yes,
when there's two or three of you, certainly as a freelancer, you know,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, God, I think the first, because I freelanced for a little while after I came back from Australia, and I think the first year I took a week's holiday or something. You
yeah,
know,
I can imagine.
and you think you can do that forever, don't you? But then after the first year, you realize you need a break. But pretty early on in the agency, 3 or 4 years on, I remember taking a 2 week holiday and thinking, there's a lot of brilliant people making it all happen without me. You know, and that's when I started to realize as a business owner,
Great.
you know, my job isn't about delivery. Sometimes it is, but it's not about doing the doing all the time. It's about the other bigger stuff. It's
Yeah,
about setting vision. It's about making sure the right people are in the right positions. But it's quite a liberating feeling when you realize you've created this machine that
brilliant.
can kind of work without you. So yeah, I totally agree with that. But the reality is, the early years, it's not always
It,
like that at all.
the reality for me is at that point it's not a business. It's a group of people working really hard, and that's great.
Yeah.
It's not that you have to start like that, but without that as the end goal, we find this a lot of the reasons we get involved with businesses that we work with is because they're stuck at the thing I've always said, and it's, I'm interested in your view because you'll have come through this curve, but I always say if you imagine an exponential curve of a business, most businesses grow exponentially if you increase by the same percentage every year. You can get to a certain size of business and success with a few good people in sheer blood and guts. And you know, you mentioned right at the start about systems and stuff. But once we are at the limit of our main resources, which is time, even another 10% growth can't be happened if it's dependent on the people giving another 10% of the time because they don't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
the challenge with that for me is it's a fundamental mindset change of being the first person to, you know, what do I do to make it grow, or what do I
Yeah.
do to do this, to being the leader and the manager, etc., to get the best out of others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember in the early-ish days, we were having this conversation, and I think we made a couple of strategic hires, and I think we had the fear about it at the time because, you know, one of the senior hires, they maybe had 30% 30% of their time would be immediately working on clients, but we had this 2/3 of their time that had nothing to do. And obviously the reality is
Yeah,
you get somebody into that position. The business owners, their time is freed up to prospect more clients, to think more strategically, and the business will come, and it did in spades. But
yeah,
the point is, it's quite scary because suddenly you're thinking this is straight off the bottom line, and they're only going to be doing 1/3 of their time doing
yeah.
billable work. And I think that probably holds a lot of people back
I,
because actually you think, you know, and there's nothing wrong with a lifestyle business.
no,
You know,
no,
it can pay really well. It's probably, you know, it's stress free generally, but ultimately you said you can, you know, you've got a few good people and you can turn a good profit, but eventually those few good people will probably leave because they're going to want bigger and better things. They might have more ambition. They might want to work on bigger clients. Yeah, so definitely creating that machine is super important, but there is always an element of a bit of a leap of faith. But if the
100%.
you know, and you will coach companies on this, I'm sure, but the theory is solid, isn't it? It's not okay. People, you invest in the right places, you make the right hires, the
Yep.
company will grow and the profit will follow. It's a pretty logical approach, isn't it?
It's that classic phrase of it's simple, but it's not easy. If
Mm.
that makes sense, it is a simple process, but it's not always easy to follow and deliver because the human being gets in the way. The fears, the concerns, as you said, the cost, seeing things as costs rather than investments,
Yeah,
all these things hold us back. And it's fascinating.
I mean that's a good point. Cost versus investment. It's just reframing because
Yeah,
it should always be an investment, shouldn't it?
100%.
Investment in technology, and it will always free up capacity. It will drive profit. It will make you more efficient. There's
Yep,
always a benefit. You might not be able to see it, but it'll flow through in the P&L.
absolutely, absolutely, 100%. But thank you for that. No, it was good to get your views because you bumped into where you are right now. You must have gone through that process as opposed to
Mhm.
some people that we work with and perhaps are watching are still wrestling with that concept of. I heard a lady called Jennifer Byrne who spoke at an event. We spoke at it about a couple of times over the last few years. She's ex CTO at Microsoft, so she knows a few things about successful businesses. But she said when in the US now when they recruit C-suite executives, they actively test them on their ability not to do things. And I was in a room of business owners. You will see them go, "What's she talking?" It's just like, "Yeah, okay, but if you get it, you get it," sort of thing. It's like about how I can lead other people better rather than do that. Final question, Will. What would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
Oh, blimey. Well, that comes back to playing the long game again, I think.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, obviously, do a probably do a degree in accountancy or law, and I'd be a managing partner in some law firm by now, all being well. But that
But
aside,
you wouldn't be having the fun.
no. Well, that's it. That's it. And it's a pretty good industry, really. Public relations. I must admit, it's very, very, very lucky to kind of work with these people. Work in this environment with creative people. The problem is it becomes I always say to kind of new recruits, sometimes the madness and the craziness of an average day becomes normal, and
Yes.
it just becomes the norm that one day you're at Harrogate Town Football Club with a black sheep running around the field, and then you've got a camel in Park Square in Leeds, and then you're up in a helicopter over North Yorkshire, but it's just all in a day's work. But yeah, again, it comes back to playing the long game. I think there's a lot to be said for really, we talk about there's 100,000 hours theory, isn't there?
Yes.
You become a master when you've done 100,000 hours of something, and I don't know how many years that is. It's probably, what's that, about 15 years, 13 years, I don't know. But you don't have to stick in the same role all your life, but challenge yourself, push yourself, but be patient and choose jobs with intention.
Brilliant.
you know and play the long game and put the hours in and be dedicated, and when you get to your 30s, it will start to pay dividends. And I think that's true of any career in any sector, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Brilliant. I couldn't agree more. Sound advice for everyone. Um, well, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I really appreciate your time. And for anyone that's watching that would like to get in touch with you or Prohibition PR, what would be the best way of doing that?
Yeah, so probably the Prohibition website, prohibitionpr.co.uk. That tells you all about us. We have all sorts of resources on there. We do 20 webinars a year that are free to attend on
Oh,
all
brilliant.
aspects of marketing, so you can sign up to them. There'll be a link to our podcast on there as well, Embracing Marketing Mistakes. But yeah, that's your best first port of call.
Brilliant. Well, look, it'd be great to swing by another 6 to 12 months and just see the next set of learnings that you've had from the next stage of growth. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.